You need to watch this if you crave chills down your spine. Welcome to Soul Studios. Here, true crime meets the unknown. Suspense lurks in every shadow, and supernatural forces whisper from the dark. We craft chilling, edge-of-your-seat short stories inspired by the eerie, the unexplained, and the most haunting mysteries. 3 new stories drop every week, each one darker than the last. Are you ready to step inside? Subscribe now before the next story finds you.
In 2017, 4 psychology students snuck into a sealed room uncovered beneath their university's psych building, a room no one remembered being built. It was small, windowless, and every inch of it was covered in mismatched antique mirrors. At first, it was just for a prank, a mirror challenge for TikTok. But as they stared into the glass, their reflections started blinking out of sync, smiling on their own, and whispering things no one should know. One by one, the students vanished. Only one came out, shaking, bleeding, and whispering. She got out. I didn't. If you love true crime-style horror, haunted urban legends, and psychological stories that twist reality until it breaks, subscribe now and hit the bell, because at Soul Studios we tell the stories you weren't supposed to find. And remember, if your reflection ever moves without you, don't blink, don't turn around. In the early hours of a cold October morning, campus security at Blackwood University found 22-year-old Emily Strauss stumbling out of an abandoned sub-basement entrance of the psychology building. She was alone, shivering and covered in fine cuts as if she'd run through broken glass. Emily's eyes were wide with terror and she kept whispering, "It wasn't them. It wasn't them." Over and over. Her 3 friends, Kyle, Jasmine, and Matt, were nowhere to be found. When police questioned Emily later that day, her story was almost too horrifying to believe. Yet every word she uttered was true, or at least she believed it was. To understand the chilling events that unfolded in the so-called reflection room, we have to go back to the beginning. 2 weeks earlier, Blackwood University had begun renovations on Dyer Hall, the oldest wing of the psychology department. During demolition of a sealed-off storage area in the basement, construction workers made an unsettling discovery. Behind a false wall was a narrow stairwell leading even deeper underground. At the bottom, they found a small hidden chamber. Every inch of this secret room, walls, floor, and ceiling, was covered in an assortment of mismatched antique mirrors, all bolted tightly in place. Some mirrors were cloudy with age, others cracked, and their ornate frames ranged from Victorian gilded designs to plain, edgeless glass. It was as if someone had raided every antique shop and attic, then built a patchwork quilt of mirrors to encase the entire room. The construction crew was baffled. There were no records of this room's construction in any campus archives, and university officials, when informed, denied it ever existed. In fact, the administration quickly ordered the room to be sealed back up, fueling rumours that they wanted whatever was inside kept secret. Of course, once whispers of a mirror room beneath Dyer Hall made their way through the student body, curiosity spread like wildfire. Some students joked it was an art installation or an old psychology experiment lab. Others spun urban legends about its purpose. One particularly eerie rumour claimed it was used for occult research in the 1940s, experiments in sensory deprivation and scrying, gazing into reflective surfaces to communicate with spirits. There were also internet whispers comparing it to the infamous Devil's Toy Box, an urban legend about a shack in Louisiana where all 6 interior surfaces are mirrors. According to that legend, anyone who stayed too long inside that mirror room would go insane or have their soul stolen by the devil. University staff dismissed such talk as nonsense, but the seed of mystery was planted. A hidden chamber of mirrors with no explanation? It was too juicy for students to ignore. Among those intrigued by the discovery were 4 senior psychology majors, each with a distinct personality and motive for exploring the reflection room. Emily Strauss. Quiet, introverted, and deeply empathic, Emily had a gentle demeanour that hid an inner strength. She was a semi-believer in the paranormal, open-minded but cautious. Since childhood, Emily suffered from recurring night terrors, often involving mirrors. In her nightmares, she would see a dark figure standing just behind her in the reflection, or her own face distorted into something inhuman just before she'd wake up screaming. These experiences left her both fearful and fascinated by the idea that maybe the mind could conjure frightening realities. When she heard about the mirror room, Emily felt an odd mix of dread and curiosity. She wasn't one to break rules, but something about this room called to her nightmares. Maybe confronting it could lay her fears to rest. Kyle Ramirez, the outspoken skeptic of the group, Kyle prided himself on being a man of science and logic. He was a top student in the psych department, known for debunking paranormal claims in class discussions with a sarcastic wit. Kyle didn't believe in ghosts or curses one bit. To him, the reflection room was probably a forgotten research project, perhaps related to studies on perception or mirror illusions. In fact, he suspected if anything strange happened in there, it would have a perfectly rational explanation. Kyle often said, "People see what they want to see." When the rumours spread, he rolled his eyes at the ghost stories but saw an opportunity. This was a chance to prove that any spooky experiences inside were all in their heads, textbook examples of psychological phenomena. Jasmine Lee, bright and bubbly on the outside, Jasmine was an aspiring influencer, constantly documenting her life on social media. She had a growing following on TikTok, where she posted everything from campus vlogs to trendy dance challenges. Beneath her confident exterior, she was secretly insecure about her image and always chasing the next big thing to boost her online clout. The moment Jasmine caught wind of a haunted mirror room on campus, she was ecstatic. This was the viral content opportunity of the year. She imagined filming a spooky mirror room challenge for TikTok, hashtags and all. Jasmine didn't particularly believe in the paranormal, but she wasn't against playing it up for the camera. Her plan: break into the room, record some eerie footage, maybe do the classic Bloody Mary chant in the mirror, and come out with a killer video that would skyrocket her views. Besides, doing it with friends would be fun. What could go wrong? Matt O'Neill. Matt was the group's resident paranormal enthusiast and a bit of a conspiracy theorist. Ever since he was little, he loved ghost stories and X-Files reruns. He ran a small side blog about urban legends and often tried to convince his friends of various supernatural truths. Matt was also the comic relief of the group, using humour to ease tensions. He'd crack jokes like, "If a ghost jumps out, I'll just hit it with my student loans." But underneath the jokes, Matt was deeply intuitive. He claimed he could sense vibes of places, and from the moment he heard about the hidden mirror chamber, he had a gut feeling that something was off about it. He was eager to explore it, both to finally experience something truly paranormal and to ensure his friends stayed safe if there really was dark stuff involved. Matt armed himself with a few ghost-hunting tools for the adventure: an EMF meter app on his phone, a crucifix his grandmother had given him, just in case, and a head full of folklore knowledge. This unlikely team came together one afternoon in the campus coffee shop, buzzing about the reflection room. Matt had learned that construction on that part of Dyer Hall was paused for a few days, apparently some permit issue, meaning the area would be relatively unguarded over the weekend. It was the perfect window to sneak in. Jasmine was already brainstorming video titles. Hashtag Mirror Room Challenge was a frontrunner. Emily was nervous, biting her lip as the others excitedly chatted, but she agreed to join. Better to stick with her friends than be left alone with her wild imagination. Kyle only agreed because, as he put it with a smirk, "You'll all definitely scare yourselves stupid. Someone level-headed has to document the real story here." In truth, Kyle was curious too. A tiny part of him wanted to see if there was any basis to the tales, if only to debunk them. By nightfall, they had a plan. They would meet up at 11:30 p.m. behind Dyer Hall, where a back door to the construction zone could be jimmied open. They chose late night for maximum spookiness and to avoid campus police. Each of them prepared in their own way. Emily packed a small first aid kit and her lucky charm, a rabbit's foot keychain for comfort. Kyle brought along a high-powered flashlight and his camcorder. He wanted more reliable footage than just a phone. Jasmine cleared her phone storage for a long recording and practiced an excited yet terrified expression for the intro, and Matt dug out an old Ouija board from his closet as a joke. "Maybe we can ask the mirror spirits some questions," he quipped, earning an eye roll from Kyle. They had no idea what they were getting themselves into. Just before midnight, the four met as planned and slipped into the cordoned-off construction area. Surrounded by scaffolding and the smell of fresh drywall, they found the unmarked door that led to the newly discovered stairwell. The door had been hastily resealed with a padlock and a no-entry sign. Not to be deterred, Jasmine produced a pair of bolt cutters borrowed from her cousin in the maintenance crew. With a decisive snap, the lock fell away. A sense of nervous excitement passed between them. Before they descended, Jasmine insisted on filming an introduction for the video. On camera, illuminated by the harsh light of Kyle's flashlight under her chin, for that campfire story effect, she whispered dramatically, "Tonight, we're exploring the secret mirror room our university doesn't want us to see. Legend has it this place is haunted, and we're here to find out the truth. Will we see ghosts in the reflection? Will Bloody Mary make an appearance? Or is it all just a mind game? Keep watching, if you dare." Emily managed a weak smile. Kyle mockingly wiggled his fingers like a ghost and said, "Ooh, scary," under his breath, ruining Jasmine's take. They all laughed, perhaps a bit too loudly for their own nerves. Despite the tension, the camaraderie and Matt's occasional one-liners kept the mood relatively light for now. Once inside, they carefully made their way down the narrow staircase single file, with Kyle leading and Matt at the rear. The further down they went, the more the air changed, from the mild, sawdust-tinged air of the renovation above to a stale, cool atmosphere below. It smelled faintly of mildew and something else, something metallic like old blood, though none of them said that comparison out loud. The beam of Kyle's flashlight danced on the concrete steps until it finally revealed the doorway to the mirror room at the bottom. They paused at the threshold. The door itself had been removed during the discovery, so the entrance was open, almost like a gaping mouth waiting to swallow them. Beyond, there was only darkness, but an odd kind of darkness. As Emily shone her smaller flashlight in, the light bounced and multiplied chaotically. "It's the mirrors," she whispered. "They're everywhere." Matt took a deep breath. "All right, this is it." Jasmine hit record on her phone again and they stepped across the threshold together. Inside, their lights revealed a truly bizarre sight. The group found themselves standing in a small rectangular chamber, perhaps 15 feet long and 10 feet wide, completely entombed in mirrors of all shapes and sizes. Dozens of reflections of the four wide-eyed students stared back at them from every direction. On one wall, an enormous armoire mirror with a Baroque frame loomed next to a cluster of tiny round hand mirrors mounted in a grid. The opposite wall was covered by a cracked floor-to-ceiling mirror that made their bodies look slightly elongated. The ceiling had antique mirror tiles, creating the disorienting impression that the group was also standing upside down above themselves. Even the floor was composed of mirror panels, scuffed and cloudy, but still reflective enough that it felt like they were standing on the surface of a dark lake. When all four lights were on, the room lit up in a dizzying kaleidoscope of moving beams and shadows. It was almost overwhelming to the senses. Jasmine and Emily both became a bit dizzy until Kyle suggested they place one flashlight on the ground as a steady light source and turn the others off for a moment. They did so, and the room settled into a dim, eerie stillness with a single LED lantern-style flashlight casting a steady glow from the floor. Now their eyes adjusted, and the true peculiarity of the space came into focus. There was graffiti on one of the mirrors, faded, almost wiped away. Matt noticed it first. In the top corner of a rectangular mirror near the door, scrawled in what looked like red paint or marker, was a single word: believe. Emily, peering over his shoulder, couldn't shake the feeling it was written in a scrawl that looked more desperate than playful. On another mirror's lower edge, Kyle spotted deep scratch marks in the glass, as if someone had dragged their fingernails across it in fury or fear. These subtle details made the back of Emily's neck prickle. Someone had been here before, maybe long ago, and they had left in distress. In the center of the room, there was one object, A single old wooden chair, painted white. It was positioned oddly, turned to face a corner where two mirror walls met. The chair's paint was peeling, and one leg looked a bit warped, but it was the only sign of furniture. "This feels like a setup for one of those paranormal experiments," Matt murmured. He gently placed a hand on the chair's back. It wobbled. "Maybe a psychomantium or something. You know, like Dr. Moody's mirror-gazing thing to talk to the dead," he added, referencing the old technique where people sit in a dim room with a mirror to try and contact spirits. Emily knew about that from one of her classes. Some cultures believed mirrors were portals to the spirit world, and there's even a practice of covering mirrors in a house after someone dies to prevent the soul from getting trapped. She shared that tidbit softly. In some traditions, people cover mirrors after a death so the spirit doesn't get confused or caught. Mirrors have always been strange, I guess. Jasmine shuddered exaggeratedly for the camera. "Great, Emily, love that for us. Trapped spirits, super comforting." Her tone was joking, but she avoided looking too long into any single mirror after that. Kyle cleared his throat. "All right, so what's the plan exactly? We need some structure here, or we'll be stumbling around all night getting freaked out by our own reflections." Always practical, he wanted to approach this like a mini research project. Jasmine was happy to oblige. Structured content made for a better video. They gathered in a huddle, as best they could given their multiple reflections crowding in too. In low voices, they outlined the mirror room challenge they intended to perform, combining a bit of science and a bit of legend. Lights out, one candle. To set the mood, and to simulate conditions known to cause optical illusions, they would turn off all flashlights and use only a single candle placed on the floor. Dim lighting was key. Kyle mentioned that staring into a mirror in low light can cause your face to appear to change or show strange things due to a known psychological effect. 4 corners. Each of them would take a different side of the room, essentially each person facing a different mirror. This way, everyone would conduct the staring experiment simultaneously. They'd stand maybe an arm's length from the wall so they could see themselves clearly by candlelight. 10 minutes of silence. They agreed to stare quietly at their own reflections for at least 10 minutes straight, without speaking or breaking eye contact. Jasmine set her phone to vibrate after 10 minutes as a timer. This mirrored a famous experiment by psychologist Giovanni Caputo, who found that after about 10 minutes of mirror gazing, many people hallucinate dramatically. Nearly 90% of participants in his study saw their own faces deform or turn into a monster in the mirror. Kyle, ever the academic, recounted those stats to remind everyone that if we see weird stuff, it's likely just our brains playing tricks. Emily nodded, recalling reading about that in class. It's sometimes called the strange face illusion. Matt quipped, or maybe it's a gateway to actually see the monsters within. Mwahaha, wiggling his fingers. Emily elbowed him gently. Document everything. Jasmine's phone would record video the entire time, positioned on the chair to capture as much of the room as possible in wide angle. Kyle also had his camcorder on a tripod. He'd set it up in one corner to get another perspective. They wanted evidence of whatever happened, whether for science or TikTok fame. Group debrief and next step. After 10 minutes, they'd regroup in the center and share what they saw. If everyone only experienced mild hallucinations, they might then escalate the challenge for fun, perhaps by trying a known mirror ritual like chanting Bloody Mary 3 times or calling out to any spirits present. Matt was particularly keen on asking questions to the room, EVP style. Jasmine figured the drama of a Bloody Mary attempt would be gold for the video. Emily was hesitant about that part. There was something about deliberately calling a ghost that felt like crossing a line. But she kept quiet as the majority were in favor. With the plan set, they moved to their positions. Jasmine carefully set her iPhone, already recording night vision video, on the wooden chair. In frame, it could see at least parts of each of them against the mirrored walls. Matt lit the single thick candle they brought, a vanilla-scented one. Jasmine joked it was to keep the demons smelling fresh. Then, one by one, they shut off their flashlights, leaving only the gentle flickering candlelight reflected infinitely around them. For a moment, none of them spoke. The only sound was their breathing and an occasional drip of water somewhere in the distant pipes. The room was much darker now. The candle cast long shadows and a warm but weak light that made the mirrors look as if they melted into darkness at the edges. Each person stood before a different wall. Emily faced the large armoire mirror. In its wavy old glass, her silhouette quivered in the candle's glow. Kyle took the cracked floor-to-ceiling mirror, standing stiffly with arms crossed, peering at his fractured reflection. Jasmine stood in front of a cluster of smaller mirrors, which showed multiple little Jasmines at once. She had to choose one to focus on, eventually settling on the largest of them. Matt was opposite Jasmine, facing a mirror that had an oval, gilded frame. He gave a thumbs up to everyone. "All good? Timer starts now," Jasmine whispered, clicking her phone's side button to start the vibration countdown. Inside the reflection room, time seemed to slow down. At first, the 4 students felt almost silly, staring intently at themselves in silence. Matt had to stifle a nervous chuckle at how cliché this ghost hunting scene felt. But as the seconds ticked by, the heavy quiet and the focus on their reflections drew each of them into an oddly trance-like state. Emily concentrated on the face in the mirror before her. The pale oval of her face floated in darkness on the old glass, her features dim and indistinct. She noted the way the candlelight made her eyes look sunken. "This is fine," she thought. "It's just me." But as she continued to stare without blinking much, her vision blurred at the periphery. The reflections of the candle flame danced along the mirror's imperfections, creating the illusion of movement in the corners of the room. A few minutes in, Emily's mind began to wander. The silence reminded her of the stillness in her bedroom right before a night terror would strike. She recalled waking up as a child, seeing a reflection on her closet door mirror that she swore wasn't hers. Heart pounding, Emily tried to keep herself grounded. She silently recited a mantra. "It's not real. It's just in my head." Across the room, Jasmine was having a hard time maintaining focus. She was simultaneously fascinated by and nervous about what she might see. In one of the small mirrors at eye level, her face looked unusually gaunt. "Must be the lighting," she mused. After a few minutes, as her eyes adjusted, she noticed something unsettling. The multiple reflections of herself in the various antique mirrors were not all in sync. It was subtle, perhaps an effect of the mirror's different angles, but she could swear that one of the smaller mirrors showed her face turned slightly away, even though she was looking straight ahead. Jasmine shifted her gaze quickly to that mirror. It showed only the side of her head now, as if she were facing the wall, though she clearly wasn't. A chill ran down her spine. She flicked her eyes to another mirror. Her reflection there lagged just a fraction of a second after her movement. A bead of sweat formed on Jasmine's temple. "This has to be my mind playing tricks," she told herself. She had read about optical illusions and how peripheral vision in dim light can be deceptive. She forced a grin at her main reflection, trying to appear braver than she felt. The reflection grinned back, but the expression lingered longer than the one on her actual face. Jasmine quickly looked down, breaking eye contact to collect herself. Meanwhile, Kyle was steadfastly not freaking out, at least at first. He remained analytical, observing any changes in his reflection in the tall, cracked mirror. The crack in the glass ran right through the middle of his face, splitting his reflected image in two. It was disconcerting, but Kyle focused on it as an object of study. As minutes passed, he noted his features seemed to melt and reassemble if he stared without blinking. His short brown hair appeared to grow longer in the reflection, then recede. His eyes seemed to darken and then lighten. Classic symptoms of the mind struggling to maintain a steady perception in low light, he thought. Troxler effect, his mind catalogued. When you stare at a single point, unattended details fade away and can morph. He knew the science, and yet, knowing didn't fully prepare him for how uncanny it would feel to watch your own face change into something alien. At one point, the cracked halves of his face misaligned, and Kyle imagined he saw another face, peering out from just behind his shoulder in the mirror. It looked like a shadowy figure, eyes gleaming. He refused to turn around. He knew nothing was actually behind him, and he wasn't about to spook himself because of an illusion. But as he stared down his own reflection, Kyle noticed his mirror self's eyes. Were they tracking something behind him? The Kyle in the mirror was no longer meeting his gaze, but seemed to be looking over his shoulder, lips curling into a subtle smirk. A surge of anger and fear hit Kyle. He reached up to rub his eyes and blink away the image. When he looked again, his reflection was normal, wide-eyed and plainly scared. Pull it together, he chided himself. He took a deep breath and continued the experiment, determined to last the full 10 minutes without chickening out. Matt, on the other hand, was the most excited, and thus perhaps the least mentally prepared when things began to truly get strange. At first, he treated the mirror gazing like a meditation. He relaxed his posture and breathed slowly. In his mind, he half hoped to see something paranormal. Show me something, he thought toward the mirror playfully. The oval mirror in front of him had a layer of dust or grime at the edges, forming a kind of vignette around his reflected face. As the candle flickered, shadows played tricks on the mirror's surface. Matt thought he saw a flicker of movement behind him in the reflection, a dark shape flitting past. Unlike Kyle, Matt did turn around to check, breaking the rules momentarily. He swept the room with his eyes. Nothing but the still forms of his friends, each silently absorbed in their own gaze. The room felt different with his back to the mirror, like eyes were boring into his back from all the reflections he'd now turned away from. He quickly faced the mirror again. Stay focused, he reminded himself. As he stared into his own brown eyes in the dim glass, Matt recalled an old legend from one of his blog posts. If you look into a mirror long enough, you might see the devil. It was said about the Devil's Toy Box and other spooky mirrors. He half smiled at the thought. Just then, the face in the mirror seemed to blink. Even though Matt hadn't. He was sure he hadn't. His heart skipped. He tested it. He held his eyes open, staring unblinking. The mirror Matt's eyes in that dusty oval appeared to glisten wetly, and yes, the reflection blinked on its own. Once, slowly. Matt's blood went cold. He opened his mouth to call out, then stopped. He told himself, no, wait, if I speak now, I'll scare everyone and break the experiment. Am I sure it wasn't me? Maybe I blinked without realizing. He blinked a few times deliberately to normalize the sensation, then stared again. The reflection stared back unblinking now, matching him. Over the next minute, Matt watched in both horror and awe as his reflected face began to shift. His cheekbones sharpened, eyes sinking, mouth widening into a subtle grin that Matt knew he wasn't making. It was like looking at a funhouse mirror, except the distortion wasn't coming from the glass. It was coming from the face itself. A thought crept unbidden into Matt's mind. Something in the mirror is looking at me. He felt a pressure building in his ears, and the air seemed to thicken. Suddenly, Jasmine let out a small whimper. She hadn't meant to. She was trying so hard to be brave, but she couldn't contain it. In her mirrors, she had just witnessed something terrifying. For the past minute, the reflections of her friends visible at the edges of her mirror had all quietly turned to look directly at her. Not that the real friends. She could see from the corner of her eye that everyone stood facing their own mirrors. It was the reflections of Emily, Kyle, and Matt in Jasmine's mirror that had moved on their own. They faced her with blank, dead-eyed stares, and in each of those tiny reflection faces, Jasmine swore the mouths were moving, silently forming words she couldn't hear. One mouthed something that looked like her name, Jazz. That's when she couldn't help the whimper escaping her throat. The spell of silence shattered. Emily tore her gaze away from her mirror and looked over to Jasmine. Are you okay? She asked quietly, voice trembling. Jasmine didn't answer immediately. She was breathing fast, trying to compose herself and not lose it on camera. Kyle, grateful for a break, stepped back from his mirror. He turned his flashlight back on, flooding the room with a harsh beam. Everyone blinked at the sudden light. Jasmine clutched her arms. I'm fine. Just thought I saw something. She gave a shaky laugh, attempting to return to her influencer persona. Good content, right? But her eyes told a different story. They were shining with held-back fear. Matt exhaled and broke into a nervous grin. Guys, this is wild. I definitely saw some creepy stuff. He was trying to maintain enthusiasm, but he looked a little pale. Emily noticed he kept glancing back at his mirror over his shoulder. How long was that? Kyle asked, checking his watch. The timer hadn't gone off yet, but his watch read 12:07 a.m. They had lasted about 7 or 8 minutes by his guess. Not quite 10 minutes, Jasmine said, looking at her phone's blank screen. She realized the timer hadn't vibrated yet. But close enough, I think, Emily added. None of them were eager to continue the full duration after that interruption. They all gathered near the center where the candle still flickered on the floor. It felt safer to huddle together. The mirrors continued to reflect them at odd angles, and more than one of them avoided looking directly at their own reflection now. For a moment, they just compared what they experienced. Jasmine admitted that she saw something freaky in the reflections. I don't know. I think my eyes were playing tricks. I saw you all. Like your reflections were looking at me, and I swear I saw myself, but not myself. It sounds dumb. Matt put a hand on her shoulder. No, not dumb. I think this room is designed to mess with us. Kyle nodded, trying to stay rational. I saw distortions too. My face wasn't my face after a while. This is actually a known illusion. Our brains, deprived of normal stimuli, start filling in the gaps with weird stuff. It's like how if you say Bloody Mary in a mirror in a dark room, your mind can make you see her. It's a sort of self-hypnosis. He deliberately cited that classic legend to normalize the experience. Everyone knew the Bloody Mary challenge. Usually nothing really happened except an overactive imagination. Though he left out the part that some people claim a bloody ghost appears, no need to encourage that line of thought now. Emily bit her lip. She hadn't shared yet what she saw. The truth was, at one point her reflection's face had subtly changed into someone else's. For a split second, she thought she saw the visage of her deceased grandmother standing behind her in the mirror, a woman who had died when Emily was a child. It left her shaken. But she only said, I kept thinking I saw movement behind me, like a shadow or, I don't know, probably just my peripheral vision. She downplayed it, not wanting to worry the group. Matt took a deep breath and volunteered his experience. My reflection, it wasn't me. It smiled at me. He tried to grin as he said it, to make it light, but no one laughed. Kyle flashed his skeptical half-smile. Mirror neurons making you think it smiled? We often unconsciously mimic what we think we see. Matt frowned. No, man, I wasn't smiling. I was stone-faced, and it winked or blinked at me. He turned to Jasmine's camera, still recording on the chair. We got that on video, I hope. At this mention, all of them looked toward Jasmine's phone on the chair. The phone was still propped up, its wide-angle lens aimed at them. The screen was dark. It was recording with the screen off to avoid extra light. Should we watch the footage back now? Jasmine asked, reaching for it. Not yet, Emily whispered, surprising herself. Let's finish what we came to do first, right? Then we can review everything in a safe, bright place. She didn't say it, but she felt a strange reluctance to play back the video while inside the room. A part of her feared what they might see on it while still in here. The others seemed to sense this too, and agreed to hold off. Okay, Jasmine sighed, regaining some of her showwoman persona. So do we escalate the challenge or call it quits? She was relieved to have stopped the staring session, but also a little disappointed that nothing concretely paranormal had happened. At least nothing she was sure wasn't just a trick of the eye. The content would be good, but it might not be the mind-blowing ghost encounter her followers would love. Matt, on cue, said, We can try Bloody Mary or something if we're up for it. He forced a grin, but his voice was tense. Emily shook her head quickly. I don't think that's a good idea. The others looked at her. Quiet Emily, suddenly firm. This room, I don't know. I just have a really bad feeling now. Maybe we should leave. Her instinct was screaming that they had stirred something up, but Kyle interjected, giving a light shrug. It's freaky, yeah, but we're all okay. Honestly, this has been kind of amazing from a psychology standpoint. Leave it to Kyle to still be thinking academically. I'd hate to come all this way and not at least try the classic mirror game. He managed a smirk, but it didn't reach his eyes. In truth, Kyle's pride was on the line. He didn't want to be the one who got scared first, and right now Emily looked the most shaken. Jasmine, ever image-conscious, chimed in, If it gets too scary, we stop. But maybe one quick round of Bloody Mary? The viewers will eat it up. We can each say it into our own mirror or do it together in one mirror. She turned to Emily gently. Em, you can stand with me if you want. We'll do it together and then we're out. Okay? Emily hesitated. She trusted her gut, which told her to run. Yet the peer pressure of her friends and her own curiosity battled that gut feeling. Finally, with a lump in her throat, she agreed softly. Okay, one quick thing, then we go. Matt picked up the candle from the floor and held it like a lantern. Group Bloody Mary, perhaps? Or maybe we try something else mirror-related, he mused. He was thinking of another ritual he'd read online called the Three Kings, but that involved more setup and 2 mirrors with chairs, something they weren't prepared for. Perhaps sticking to the well-known script was simplest. Let's all face the big mirror, Kyle suggested, pointing to the largest armoire mirror, the one Emily had been at. It was big enough to fit all 4 of their reflections if they stood in a line. The idea of crowding together gave them comfort too. They repositioned themselves in front of that tall mirror, shoulder to shoulder, with Matt holding the candle just below the mirror to light their faces. The old glass was now showing 4 flickering, uneasy faces. In the reflection, behind them, the rest of the room stretched out infinitely, candlelight bouncing back and forth between opposing mirrors, creating the illusion of a corridor of flames, an endless tunnel of their backs receding into darkness. Emily tried not to look at that part. It made her dizzy and paranoid that one of those distant reflected figures might not be copying them correctly. On 3, we all say Bloody Mary 3 times, Jasmine instructed, her voice hushed. She was recording with her phone in her free hand now, pointing it at the mirror to catch their faces and whatever might appear. The chair and other camera were behind them now, possibly still recording audio, if not in frame. Kyle couldn't resist a quip. Get ready for absolutely nothing to happen. Matt took a deep breath and mentally prepared to expect something indeed might happen. Emily silently prayed this would just be a harmless prank. 1, 2, 3, Jasmine counted. In unison, quietly but clearly, they all chanted at the mirror, Bloody Mary! Bloody Mary! Bloody Mary! For a heartbeat, the only sound was the last echoes of their voices. They stared at their reflected selves, feeling supremely ridiculous and scared at the same time. Jasmine's camera was angled so she could see the screen. It showed 4 figures in night vision green standing before the mirror. Nothing out of the ordinary so far. Kyle almost laughed, a release of tension. Here we are like idiots trying to summon a children's ghost story. He was about to say something snarky when the candle flickered violently, nearly going out, and Matt gasped. I saw something behind us. Matt said in a rush, eyes huge. In the mirror, over his shoulder, he'd glimpsed movement. He whipped around, holding the candle up. The room behind them was still and empty, just reflections upon reflections. Emily's heart pounded. Had he really seen something, or was imagination in overdrive? Jasmine aimed her phone light out into the room behind them, scanning. Nothing. Maybe a draft, Kyle muttered about the candle, though he felt no breeze. Or your imagination, Matt. But Matt was insistent. No, look at the mirror, right at the far end of the reflection, he said. They all peered back at the big mirror, trying to focus deep into the infinite reflection. The effect was like looking down a pair of parallel mirrors in a dressing room, endless copies of themselves, the candle and the chair alternating. On maybe the 4th or 5th reflection back, the darkness swallowed detail. I don't see, Emily started, but then she did see it. A shape, just at the edge of where the candle's glow faded in the mirror tunnel. A humanoid outline, stepping slightly into view in one of the further reflections, then out again. As if someone had been standing just behind the last visible them in the chain, and ducked away when they tried to focus on it. There! Emily choked out, pointing. Everyone saw it now in the mirror. It was subtle and quick. If you weren't intently looking, you'd miss it. Jasmine caught it on her phone screen and nearly dropped the device. Oh my God, there is someone else here! She yelped. Immediately they spun around to check the real room behind them. The mirrors showed only themselves. No intruder, no ghostly Mary, nothing. The room was silent except for their breathing. A heavy sense of dread descended on the group. The reflections were doing things that could not be explained by simple visual illusion anymore. "We should leave. Now," Kyle said, his voice finally betraying real fear. If the skeptic was alarmed, it was serious. Emily reached for Jasmine's free hand reflexively, seeking comfort. Jasmine squeezed back. Matt slowly backed toward the door, candle in front of him. "I'll feel better when we're out of this basement," he said softly. The others agreed in mumbled assent and started to follow, keeping their eyes darting between the real space and the mirrors. They made it a few steps. In an instant, the heavy metal door at the top of the stairs clanged shut on its own, echoing through the basement. All four jumped, and Jasmine stifled a scream. The only exit was now closed. They could still get out. It hadn't locked, as far as they knew. But someone would have to go up the stairs in the dark corridor to pull it open. Who closed it? "Did the wind?" Emily whispered. Kyle's face was pale. "It wasn't windy a second ago. That door is heavy." Matt held the candle higher, as if that tiny flame could ward off whatever unseen force might be around. "All right, let's not panic," Jasmine said, though her voice shook. "We just need to go back up the stairs together." Door probably swung shut. She didn't believe her own words, but clung to them. The group moved as a tight unit toward the doorway and the foot of the stairs. To reach it, they had to pass the chair again and the spot where the candle originally was. As they did, Emily noticed something on the ground that hadn't been there before. "Guys, wait," she pointed. Scattered near the chair were shards of broken mirror that reflected the candlelight. Had one of the mirrors cracked more? Their eyes traced up to the wall, and indeed, one small circular mirror near the ceiling had fallen off and shattered on the ground. The timing was suspect. Perhaps it fell when the door slammed. Jasmine remembered the camera on the chair, still recording. This might have caught whatever happened. She grabbed her phone from the chair now and quickly panned it around to ensure nothing lurked in a blind spot. The phone's screen, still on night vision mode, showed their green-tinted figures and something behind them. Jasmine froze, then slowly lifted the phone to point at the mirror ahead. On the screen, over her shoulder in that very large mirror, she could see another Jasmine standing a few paces back, holding up her phone. Except the Jasmine in the reflection had a horrific, exaggerated grin and wasn't mirroring Jasmine's movements. She stood still, smiling ear to ear unnaturally, while Jasmine's real hands trembled holding the phone. In fact, all their reflections in that mirror were wrong. "Kyle," Jasmine whispered, unable to articulate. Kyle followed her gaze to the mirror and saw it too. In the reflection, the four of them were still lined up in front of the mirror as they had been during the Bloody Mary chant, not where they actually stood now near the doorway, and each of those reflected faces wore a dreadful expression, blank eyes and two wide smiles. The copies just stood there, not moving, watching. Matt saw it next and let out a strangled curse. "That's not us," he gasped. Emily felt her knees weaken at the sight. It was like an alternate version of them was frozen in the mirror, left behind and now staring them down. Before anyone could react further, a sound came from the far end of the room, a soft tapping on glass. Tap, 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 in slow, deliberate rhythm. Emily spun toward the source. It was one of the mirrors on the opposite wall. Her blood ran cold as she saw a handprint appear on the inside of the mirror, pressing out as if something was behind the glass. The antique mirror, with a cloudy surface, bowed outward slightly with each tap, the handprint smearing. "Oh no! No, no!" Emily whimpered, backing into Kyle. "Go! Get up the stairs!" Kyle yelled, adrenaline kicking in. He practically pushed Jasmine and Emily toward the doorway. Matt was already at the bottom of the stairs, holding the candle with one hand and using the other to grip the railing. They all rushed to the stairs in a frantic clamber. Behind them, the tapping grew louder and faster. Now it was multiple taps, dozens, coming from all around, as if every mirror had knuckles knocking on it from the inside. The sound was a cacophony of clicks and taps, mixed with what sounded like distant laughter reverberating through the chamber. Jasmine was crying openly now, filming forgotten, her phone clutched against her chest as she ran. Emily kept glancing back, and in the strobing light of the candle and Kyle's jostling flashlight, which he'd pulled out again, she saw figures moving erratically in the mirrors. The reflections of themselves were peeling away from the mirror surfaces, stepping into the room with jerky, unnatural motions. There was Kyle. Yet not Kyle, crawling out of the long, cracked mirror on all fours, head tilted at an impossible angle. Another figure with Jasmine's face, but distorted and wrong, slid out of the cluster of small mirrors, limbs elongating as it emerged. Matt's grin from the oval mirror stretched ear to ear as his hand, reached out from the glass, groping. And Emily caught a glimpse of herself in the armoire mirror, still standing inside it as she had been minutes ago, but the reflection's eyes were solid black and tears of blood ran down her cheeks in streaks. That thing smiled sadly at Emily and lifted a finger to its lips as if to say, "Shh." Emily choked on a scream and turned to flee up the stairs. They barreled up the concrete steps, Matt leading with the candle. The stairway was narrow and windowless. The only light was what they brought. The door at the top was indeed shut tight. Matt reached it first and grabbed the handle. It wouldn't budge. "It's locked," he cried, panicking. He yanked and rattled it hard. Kyle shoved past the others to help. It felt like someone heavy was holding it closed on the other side. "On 3, we both ram it," Kyle said. Before he could count, a mirror at the foot of the stairs, one mounted by the doorway below, suddenly fell off and shattered on the bottom step, narrowly missing Emily's heels. A shard bounced up and nicked the back of her leg. She yelped and stumbled onto the stair above. From the broken mirror's remains, a shape was rising, the reflective pieces on the ground, each showing fragments that together formed the image of a person standing up. It was disorienting, like watching a puzzle assemble itself. Piece by piece, the reflection of Matt coalesced, grinning wickedly through the shards. The real Matt, hearing glass behind him, glanced back down and his face blanched. "It's me." But he was unable to finish. Kyle and Matt threw their weight against the heavy metal door. It budged a fraction with a grinding noise. "Again!" Kyle shouted. They slammed it again. This time it opened a crack, enough for Kyle to stick his arm through. He forced it open with a strength he didn't know he had, adrenaline surging. Cool night air flooded in from outside, but so did the darkness from the corridor behind them. The girls were right on their heels. As Jasmine rushed up the last step, something clamped around her ankle. She screamed, nearly dropping her phone. Looking down, she saw a pale hand, her own hand, gripping her ankle tightly, nails digging in. One of the reflection creatures, the one that looked like her, had darted forward from a mirror near the stairs and caught her. It was crawling on the stairs, pulling with inhuman strength. Jasmine kicked desperately with her free leg, sobbing, "Let me go, please." Emily turned back, and without hesitation stomped on the pale hand with all her might. Once, twice. The thing's wrist made a sickening crack, and it released Jasmine's leg, recoiling with a shriek that sounded faintly like Jasmine's own voice in pain. Emily grabbed Jasmine under the arm and they lunged upward together. Now all four were through the doorway, out of the mirror room, and into the old basement corridor that led to the outside. Kyle was last, shoving the heavy door closed behind them as the sounds of shattering glass and shrill cries echoed from below. The door didn't have a lock on this side, only the padlock, which was now broken off, but there was a metal bar. He slammed the bar down into place, wedging the door shut. There was a bang from the other side, the door jolting as something hit it, but it held. The four students scrambled away from it, stumbling into the grass outside Dyer Hall's back entrance, gasping for breath. For a long moment, none of them spoke. They stood under the orange glow of a distant campus light, huddled together, eyes on the dark doorway they'd just burst from. Nothing followed, only silence and the faint rustle of night breeze through the trees. Jasmine broke down, her hands on her knees, sobbing openly now with relief and terror. Matt sank to the ground, dropping the spent candle, and let out a shaky laugh that turned into a sob of his own. We made it," he panted. "Tell me that really just happened. I'm not crazy, right?" Emily was shaking so badly she could barely stand. She realized she was clenching shards of mirror in her fist. She must have grabbed some in the scuffle without realizing, cutting her palm. She let them fall. "It happened," she whispered. "It happened." Her voice was distant, as if in a dream. Kyle immediately took charge of checking everyone. He inspected Jasmine's ankle. It had deep red marks in the shape of fingers. Matt's forearm was bleeding from a long cut, likely from forcing the door, or maybe a flying shard. Emily's calf had a shallow slice and her palm was cut and starting to drip blood. Kyle himself had a trickle of blood running down from his scalp. He hadn't even noticed he'd been cut by something, perhaps a falling fragment. They must have looked a frightful bunch. "We need to get to the campus clinic or something," Kyle said, still breathless. "And the police. We have to tell someone what happened. Where are Jasmine and Matt's cameras?" Jasmine's phone was miraculously still in her hand, recording. She stopped the recording now with trembling fingers. The screen was smeared and cracked, but it seemed the video saved. Kyle's camcorder and tripod had been left behind in the chaos, still down in the mirror room. None of them were eager to retrieve it. "Forget it," Kyle said when Matt mentioned the camcorder. "I am not going back in there." No one argued. Emily leaned against the brick wall of Dyer Hall, trying to steady her breathing. Her reflection, that twisted version of her, the memory made her stomach lurch. But they were out. They were alive. She should feel joy or relief. Strangely, she felt hollow, as if a part of her was still back in that room. As the adrenaline waned, practical concerns came back. They knew they were in trouble for breaking in, but that felt minor now compared to the unearthly danger they'd faced. "We have to tell someone what happened to that room," Matt said, eyes wide. "What if those things get out?" He looked back at the door, which now sat innocuously at the base of the building, as if it wasn't hiding something malevolent. Kyle shook his head. "Who would believe us? We sound insane." Jasmine chimed in, wiping her eyes. "The video. We have proof." She held up her phone. "At least some of it. We caught that thing in the mirror, and maybe my ankle grab. Maybe even more." The realization that her footage might show the impossible gave her a grim comfort. If it showed nothing, then they'd have to question their own sanity, but she knew what she saw was real. "We should watch it now," she said, voice still trembling. However, none of them particularly wanted to watch it right there, outside in the dark, and in case something disturbing was on it, they preferred a safer setting. "Let's get to somewhere well-lit and public, like the student center or even the campus security office," Emily urged. The others agreed. They began limping back toward the main quad, sticking close together. It was around 12:20 a.m. Campus was quiet. Only distant music from a dorm party and the hum of streetlights accompanied them. Halfway to the security office, they flagged down a campus security guard in his golf cart. The guard, seeing 4 disheveled, bleeding students approaching, immediately came to a halt and sprung into action, radioing for backup and medical assistance. In a blur, the group found themselves taken to the on-campus clinic. Their injuries were minor and easily tended to. Disinfectant, bandages, ice packs for Jasmine's sprained ankle. A police officer arrived as well, asking questions, but the friends had made a quick pact to not blurt out the whole story yet. They mumbled something about an accident in the construction area, true enough as far as it went. They claimed they'd snuck in for curiosity and things fell. Glass broke, causing their wounds. Campus officials were not pleased, but more relieved that no one was critically hurt. The matter of their trespassing and minor vandalism, breaking a mirror or two, was set aside until later. For now, rest and recovery. Within a couple of hours, Emily, Kyle, and Matt were released from the clinic. Jasmine had to stay overnight for observation due to shock and her ankle. The nurse said she'd be fine, just badly frightened. The police took a brief statement from each, admonishing them for the break-in, and mentioned that a facilities team would check the basement first thing in the morning. Kyle warned them to be careful down there, that the mirrors were all broken and it's dangerous, to discourage anyone going alone at night. The officer assured him the area would be secured. None of the 4 mentioned anything about supernatural happenings in their formal statements. They didn't want to sound crazy. They agreed to talk in private later about how or if to explain the true story to others. Just before dawn, Matt, Kyle, and Emily reconvened in Emily's dorm room, exhausted but unable to sleep. Jasmine's phone had been returned to them. The police didn't confiscate it, as they hadn't given details of what it contained. With trembling hands, Jasmine had unlocked it for them prior, insisting they review it to validate their experience. The three of them sat on Emily's bed, huddled around the cracked screen, and hit play on the main video file. At first, it showed exactly what they expected, them goofing around on entry, setting up their initial mirror gazing session. The audio captured their tense breathing and the near silence. The visuals, in that ghostly green night mode, were eerie but normal at first, just 4 people standing and staring at mirrors. Then, faintly, the strange phenomena began. On the video, one could see Jasmine's reflection in a small mirror turning toward her before she reacted in real life. One could see a shadow flit behind Matt, causing him to turn. As the recording progressed to the Bloody Mary part, the camera, still on the chair, caught the 4 of them reciting and then reacting. And there, clearly on the footage, was an extra figure in the mirror behind them that none of their real selves should have made. It was like a 5th person, lurking just out of direct sight, until they moved and it vanished. The door slam wasn't on camera. The phone fell or was pointing elsewhere then, but the audio recorded their screams and the horrifying chorus of tapping and banging that followed. Briefly, as Jasmine picked up the phone, the lens whirled and captured a single frame of something that defied logic. A grisly face lunging toward the camera, an almost perfect double of Matt, but with a mouth full of jagged teeth. The trio gasped, seeing it frozen as they paused. Finally, the video ended with chaotic blur as they ran up the stairs. They sat in stunned silence after watching. It was real. It was all real. "We have to show this to someone. The police, maybe. They can, I don't know, seal that place for good or get an exorcist or something," Matt whispered. Kyle nodded slowly, his skepticism utterly shattered by the evidence in front of him. Emily just stared blankly at the wall. "We almost didn't make it out," she murmured. "What happened to the ones that didn't?" She trailed off, unwilling to say the others, because they had all survived. Or had they? That thought gnawed at her. Everyone seemed okay now, physically, but something was deeply wrong beyond the physical. A knock came at Emily's door mid-morning. It was the police officer and a construction foreman. They looked confused and concerned. Apparently, when the facilities team went to inspect the basement room, they found nothing. No broken mirrors, no scattered glass, no wooden chair. In fact, the entrance to the sub-basement itself was gone, just solid wall where the door had been. The officer politely asked if the students were certain about where they were last night. Kyle, flabbergasted, insisted he and his friends hadn't hallucinated an entire room. The foreman confirmed the blueprint. "There is no sub-basement room under Dyer Hall. We checked thoroughly. It's solid foundation down there." The police theorized that in the darkness and stress, maybe the students went into a different area and got turned around. Matt angrily pulled up the video on Jasmine's phone to show them, but to his shock, the video file corrupted after a few seconds of play. The clear evidence they saw earlier now showed only static and a few garbled frames of them panicking, nothing distinctly supernatural. It was as if something didn't want to be revealed. The officer left unconvinced of anything more than a prank gone wrong. The school was likely to quietly handle any discipline for the break-in and brush the incident under the rug. The 4 friends gathered later that day, trying to make sense of it all. Kyle was deeply unnerved. His rational world had been upended. Jasmine, leg in a cast, was shaken but also determined to hold on to the truth of what she experienced, even if no one else believed it. Matt floated the idea that perhaps the room itself was never meant to be found, and by entering it, they somehow broke a seal. Maybe the university covering it up was intentional to keep people safe. They wondered, were those things now out in the world, or trapped back in whatever dimension they came from? The fact the room seemingly disappeared was a troubling mystery. Emily remained quiet through most of these discussions. She spent a lot of time gazing into any reflective surface with a haunted look. Once Jasmine caught Emily standing before the bathroom mirror, not moving, just staring, and Jasmine gently shook her out of it. Emily confessed she hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard tapping on glass. The group made a pact to check in on each other regularly and seek help if needed. They were bonded by this trauma now. They even debated posting what bits of video they had online anonymously to warn others. But in the end, fear of ridicule and the school's pressure, they were warned not to spread false rumours about the incident, kept them silent publicly. A week after that fateful night, Emily was the only one who hadn't returned to classes. Her friends grew worried. She withdrew, spending long hours alone in her dorm room. Counsellors offered therapy, but she struggled to articulate what was wrong. The nightmares that plagued her since childhood were worse than ever, except now they weren't only at night. She began seeing flickers in mirrors in broad daylight. A glimpse of Matt's face grinning behind hers in the bathroom mirror when Matt wasn't there. Jasmine's reflection waving to her from a window glass across campus when Jasmine sat next to her, hands still. Emily stopped looking in mirrors entirely. She covered the one in her room with a sheet and avoided reflective windows when walking around. One evening, Kyle, Jasmine and Matt decided to surprise Emily with a visit, hoping to cheer her up with takeout from her favourite diner. They knocked, and to their relief, Emily answered. She looked pale and tired, but greeted them with a small smile. They ate in her room, chatted about normal things, trying to restore a sense of normalcy. For a little while, it seemed like maybe they could all put the horror behind them. As the friends were leaving, Jasmine's phone accidentally switched to selfie mode while snapping a group photo. For a split second on the phone screen, Jasmine noticed Emily's reflection in the window behind them. Oddly, Emily's reflection wasn't smiling like the real Emily in front of her. It wore a sullen, almost angry expression. And its lips didn't move when Emily spoke a cheerful goodbye. Jasmine's heart sank. She didn't mention it then, but exchanged a worried glance with Matt and Kyle. After they left, Jasmine quietly said, "Did you guys notice anything off about Emily?" Matt rubbed his arms as if cold. She seemed distant, and she never took that sheet down off the mirror. Kyle frowned. She's been through a lot. Give her time. Jasmine showed them her phone's photo. It was a bit blurry and perhaps a trick of light, but the Emily in the reflection behind them did look different. Maybe just an artifact, Kyle said, though his voice lacked conviction. That night, Emily sat on her bed, the lights off. Only a candle burned on her desk. She couldn't stand electric lights glaring off reflective surfaces. She was writing in her journal, trying to process her feelings as Dr. Patel, the counsellor, had suggested. "I feel like I'm not alone, even when I am. It's like a part of me is still in that room, or something from that room is now in me. I can't explain it. Sometimes I'm afraid to look in the mirror because I wonder if I'll see her again. The other Emily. What if she's the real me and I'm the reflection? What if I never actually escaped?" She stopped writing as tears dripped onto the page, blurring the ink. Steeling herself, Emily decided she needed to face her fear once and for all. She got up and approached her covered mirror. With trembling hands, she pulled the sheet down. In the faint candlelight, her reflection emerged. It was just her. Pale skin, messy brown hair, sad eyes. She looked at herself for a long time, searching for any sign of otherness, nothing unnatural. She let out a shaky breath. "It's just me," she whispered. The reflection's lips moved in sync. Emily almost laughed in relief. How silly to think. A familiar voice, identical to her own, spoke softly from behind her. "Are you sure about that?" Emily's eyes widened. In the mirror, behind her shoulder, stood another Emily, smirking slightly. Emily whirled around. Nothing but darkness and the closed door of her room. Heart hammering, she turned back to the mirror. The figure was still there in the reflection, standing right behind her, leaning in close. It was Emily, but dressed in the clothes Emily wore on the night of the mirror room, not the pajamas real Emily currently had on. The reflection, Emily lifted a hand and placed it on Emily's shoulder in the mirror, yet Emily felt no touch in reality. Paralyzed by fear, Emily could only watch. The other Emily's eyes were filled with a mix of malice and pity. "You're not me," Emily stammered, voice barely audible. The figure tilted its head. "Maybe I was, Maybe I'm what you left behind." Its voice was strangely echoey. Emily felt tears on her cheeks. "What do you want?" she whispered. The reflection gave a grin that sent chills through her spine. "To trade places, of course," it hissed softly. At that instant, the candle on Emily's desk blew out, plunging the room into darkness. Down the hall, a couple of students heard, and a dorm RA rushed to check on her. They found Emily's room unlocked, the lights off, and Emily curled up on the floor sobbing, illuminated only by the flashlight on the RA's phone. The mirror was shattered, spiderweb cracks radiating from the center. Emily had thrown her journal at it in panic, breaking the glass and seemingly banishing whatever had appeared. She was inconsolable and kept saying she saw herself. In the days that followed, Emily's friends tried to comfort her, but she grew increasingly distant, her behavior at times oddly cold. She insisted on keeping every mirror in her vicinity covered or removed. Something had fundamentally changed in her. Some days she was the Emily they knew, traumatized but gentle and kind. Other days she was aloof, even cruel, saying unsettling things that didn't sound like her at all. Once, Matt swore he saw Emily talking to herself in a reflective window, her reflection smiling while her real face was blank. The question that haunts Kyle, Jasmine, and Matt to this day is, did Emily truly escape the reflection room that night, or did something else come out wearing her face? They never returned to that cursed basement, which, if the university is to be believed, never existed in the first place. They drifted apart after graduation, bonded by a secret terror, but separated by the need to move on. They check in occasionally about Emily. She withdrew from school shortly after, returning to her hometown. Their updates on her are sparse and unnerving. Her family says she's not been herself. Years later, Jasmine finally gathered the courage to post their story online, under the title The Reflection Room. In it, she included the few intact snippets of video and audio they had as evidence. Skeptics abound, of course. Many call it an elaborate hoax or a psychological case of group hallucination. But a few commenters shared urban legends of mirror rooms and doppelgangers, warning that one should never face a mirror in darkness lest you meet something uncanny. One comment in particular chilled Jasmine. "This reminds me of the Devil's Toy Box legend. Those who go in sometimes come out, but they're not the same. You're lucky and unlucky at the same time." To this day, none of them can look into a mirror without recalling that harrowing night. Matt refuses to keep mirrors in his home at all. Kyle seeks solace in rational explanations but sleeps with the lights on. Jasmine ended her influencer pursuits. She never posted on TikTok again after sharing the story anonymously. And Emily? The last time Jasmine spoke to her on the phone, Emily ended the call with a strange question. "Do you ever wonder if the reflection staring back at you is actually you?" There was a pause, and then Emily, or the thing that speaks with her voice now, gave a soft laugh and added, "Because I don't anymore." Whether the real Emily survived or a reflection took her place remains an unsolved mystery. Perhaps the reflection room claimed more than just the peace of mind of 4 friends that night. Perhaps it still has Emily trapped beyond the glass, screaming silently while an imposter lives in her skin. We may never know for sure. But if you ever find yourself alone at night, gazing into a mirror, and you get the uncanny feeling that the person looking back isn't quite you, do yourself a favor. Look away. Some doors once opened are hard to close, and some reflections once awakened might just follow you home.
Every story has an end, but here, the mysteries never stop. Thank you for watching and being a part of this journey into the unknown. Your support keeps these stories alive, and there's plenty more waiting for you. We drop 3 new stories every week, so if you crave suspense, the unexplained, and the downright chilling, make sure you're subscribed and ready for what's next. Until then, keep your lights on, your doors locked, and remember, some stories stay with you long after they're told.